Welcome to the Branding PR Podcast, where we dive deep into the stories and strategies of today's most impactful entrepreneurs, business leaders, and professionals. Whether you're building your brand, scaling your business, or just looking for inspiration, you're in the right place. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Branding PR Podcast. I am your host, Brandy Sims, and today with me, I have a wonderful guest. She's actually our first guest of the year, so I'm super excited to have this conversation. Dr. Kristy Taylor, hello, how are you?
Hello, Brandy. How are you? Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to have you. Now, for those that are unaware, Dr. Taylor is the founder of Work Solutions, LLC. She has lectured at Yale University and was actually named one of Harvard's Women in Higher Educational Leadership and is a Higher Education Leadership Fellow. So a lot of accolades there, a lot of expertise. She's also a military veteran. Thank you for your service. I know I mentioned that in our previous call.
I actually made 17 years yesterday.
Incredible. Yes. Thank you so much for your service. Yes. You are also an author.
Yeah.
And a certified professional career and executive coach. And we're going to get into those, all of those aspects and everything that you've gone through to get to where you're at today. And that's what I really enjoy about this, this particular show is that we really dive in to the experiences, the stories, the communication challenges, the strategies of industry professionals like yourself. So today it's definitely going to be right along those lines and consistent with that. But this is the type of stuff we like to do. So I'm definitely excited to get into our conversation today and just tap into it. So the first thing I want to really get into, especially talking career and professional coach, is really talking more into career branding and leadership. So as a certified professional career and executive coach, you've had the opportunity to work with so many different types of leaders across various industries. How do you define career branding and what strategies can professionals use to stand out in today's competitive market?
Brandy, thank you so much for asking that question. I think that it really goes back to why I reached out to you about being on a podcast in the first place, because this podcast probably so much focuses on talking about people building their personal brand in business. But I like to think of you and your career as the business of you. And just like I've gone through so many changes and trying to really get to the point where I am very clear on what the Work Solutions brand is, that we are the prescription for career success. Your career is going to have, people are going to have the same experiences with their career. So when we talk about and truly defining career branding, it is those elements that really make you you. It encompasses your values, the things that really mean the most to you, the things that you aspire to be. And it's really the totality of your career story. What is it that you want to be known for? So to me, it's no different than running a business. And I like to say that your career is the business of you. Your career branding is the business of you. When you're networking on LinkedIn at events or when you're sharing your resume, I actually call the resume package a career branding package. So I'm like one of the people that'll pop up when you Google career branding. My business will pop up in the DC area because I don't actually say, I will say it because it's common terms, resume,
Yes.
cover letter, but I actually talk to my clients in the aspect of saying, I'm putting together your career branding package. And that is a part of the reason why I do interview prep with that, because so many of my clients, do you have a great resume? The resume
Yes.
is what just gets you to interview, right? It is the interview itself that is really going to get you to that next level. So career branding is really who you are. What are you known for? It's those elements, right, that really make up your career story. That is really what we focus on doing and how I try to help clients.
Yes. Well, I love that. And especially just working in PR and communications over the last 15 years, working closely with interns and students and having learned some of the challenges that they have. A lot of those challenges aren't so far-fetched and they're not so far off in terms of the specific needs that they have. And a lot of it comes down to exactly what you're saying. How do you make yourself stand out? It's by highlighting what it is that you're doing that's different, highlighting what your attributes are, what makes you great, and really propelling that forward. I think one of the biggest challenges and things that I'll hear, especially from students, is that, I don't have a lot of experience, or I only work on this and I don't really have much to offer. And I'm like, you already have something. That's what you should push with. If you're an expert in this space, or you have a lot of experience, or just a little bit of something to work with, or you're very good at, or have a skill towards this, you should be using that to your advantage as you are having these conversations and interviewing and seeking these opportunities. Like what you do have something. Nobody just has nothing. So what are you doing with that something, right, to make it great and to make it sellable?
If you're a student, if you're inexperienced, you have to think about your volunteer experiences, the things that you have. But one
Yes.
thing that is so different from now, I'll make this distinction. It's a distinction, but it's also an advantage, right? So when you're running a business, and I'm sure you've heard this, right?
Yeah.
Us as entrepreneurs, we can be very creative and we want to do a million things at once. But when you're
Yes.
running a business, what any business coach will tell you is, yes, you can do all of these things eventually, but you really
Ooh.
want to focus in and get good at one thing, and that becomes your
Mhm.
mantra where you funnel in customers, right? It kind of works the same way when you're building your career brand, but there's some advantages to having actually many different skills when you're building your career brand, because in the career industry, we look at transferable skills. So
Mhm.
you can have all of these different experiences. You might have one singular career goal, but you can actually have many different transferable skills. So, for example, if you're out there right now and you're doing social media or you're doing a website, but maybe or you've done some project management, you can actually bring all of those skills under one umbrella, or
Mhm.
data analytics. So don't worry so much about, oh, I've had these different jobs or these different roles, or I don't know how to package this together. Look at the job description, or look at what you want to pursue, right? And look at the transferable skills, and really package your career branding package together to align with whatever that specific role that you're pursuing or the job. So it's actually a really great thing on the career side to have all of these different experiences and skills. But let me caveat that by saying that does not mean in this generation, on average, we stay on jobs about 2 years. So it doesn't mean just go work a job for 6 months and then stop and go to something else. But it does mean that while I'm working in a job role, that I want to maximize my experiences. For example, this might be my job title, but maybe they're doing a project and I wanted to build my skills. So there's something that I can gain from this project to upskill myself, right? I'm always saying the word upskill
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
continuously build out my skills. So you're coming with something, even if you did volunteer work. When I first started my career, when I got out of the military, off of active duty, I was 24 years old,
Mhm.
and I had a master's degree in health education. And even though I had worked as a healthcare administrator, I actually wanted to get the experience of working as a health educator. I mean, being out there and being in the field and doing things like HIV testing, health education, sex education, those types, right? You know what I did? I went to volunteer match because I went to volunteer match, found organizations that were doing that type of work, and that is literally how I filled in the gaps on my resume. I went out, did that volunteer work, and I closed the gaps on my resume to be able to pursue the type of careers that I wanted. And I was able to eventually, because I had my master's in it, take that experience and land a role teaching as a professor, because they're looking at like, okay, you've already been a teacher. Now you've done this field work. You actually have the experience. So don't sleep on that, right? In terms of building your brand and what it's going to take to get there.
See, I feel like you just dropped a gem there. I mean, come on now. That's something I've been preaching for years now. Is like volunteer work. You can get a lot of experience that you're looking for, and you're complaining about, I just can't get this job to get to this job, and I need this job to get to this job. Consider volunteer work. Volunteer work is that experience that you may be lacking. And I love that you found an opportunity in it when you were in transition from military on to fill in those gaps that you had in your career. And it actually became worthwhile for you. And it allowed you to take those necessary steps to grow out your career. So I think that's amazing, but definitely a gem nonetheless. We can't sleep on volunteer work.
No,
Cannot sleep on
I have a
volunteer work.
lot of clients who come to me who maybe you have a skills gap because you had to do you had to become a caretaker or something like
Mhm.
that. Figure out how you're gonna, volunteer and keep yourself active. If you're out of the work arena for a number of years, do some volunteer work and keep yourself engaged and can take courses on places like Udemy or Coursera to continuously upskill yourself. Start an LLC, do some consulting.
Mhm.
In times where I haven't had a job, my LLC has filled in the gap because it was like I was always working, doing freelancing work or staying engaged. So it's a lot of things that you can do in this new gig economy to really continue to build yourself. You can literally brand yourself into whatever it is that you want to be, right? 10 years
Mhm.
ago when I started I was under a different name. I started my career coaching business as healthcare consultant in 2016.
Mm.
I only did healthcare. And what happened was a couple of years ago, I relaunched as Work Solutions with the intentions of I'm only going to continue to do healthcare. So here I am spelling my name WORXK, and the RX was intentional, right? Back then, we weren't talking about being a prescription for change. We were just really being focused on healthcare. In 2022, I decided, okay, I needed to serve a broader audience, right? I'm doing the work
Mhm.
of social impact already. What can I do with the name that I already have? So we
Mhm.
shaped it into what we have now. It's taken a while, many, many changes and variations of that too. Well, I'm the prescription for change in career in the workplace and really focusing on working with individuals in social impact. But that took some evolution, right, to figure out I'm not changing the name again. So what am I
Hello.
going to do with this title, right, and move things forward? And now we're doing like all of this stuff, focused around being a prescription for career success. So
Yeah, I love that. I feel like you just did a PR spin without even thinking about it, without even trying it. You did a PR spin in that. So, but being able to repurpose that and make it into something even more, that's what it's about, especially as an entrepreneur. You got to think on your toes and be adaptable. And it sounds like you were able to do that successfully. So, speaking of, okay, I want to get into just building resiliency. So, in your REBT DEIA framework, right, you focus on building resilient teams. Can you share more about how this approach helps organizations foster inclusivity while enhancing their team performance?
So I'm going to talk a little bit. I absolutely can because this
Yeah,
is now I
we're in a
think
different space.
we're in a
We're
different
in a
space
space
where
now.
DEI is being challenged and people are like, you should
Hmm.
change the name. You should do anything. No, I'm not doing anything, right? Because I
Yeah.
think to quietly stand on what you believe. And I'm going to be honest enough, friend. I used to be that person who was like, I'm not going to involve myself in DEI and all of that. And then
Yep.
just like suddenly last year, as I was going through these many transitions with my business, I don't know what made me launch this roundtable series. And then I went to Miami University and got certified. I always get into the space when it becomes a little controversial because I'm going to quietly maneuver through this process, right? But in the process of that, I was doing my research because I don't want the tenants, even if I'm not changing the name of my framework, but even no matter how DEI is reshaped, whether you call it organizational culture or I don't know, employee engagement, you can give it whatever name you want. The problems, the challenges and problems still exist
Yep.
and the way but the other meaningful pieces of the work that's being done for DEI,
Hmm.
it is still relevant.
It's so
So
relevant.
it's
Yep.
still relevant. And so when I did this research, I combined two things: rational emotive behavior therapy, which is a cognitive model for change, and that is actually focused on individual behavior change. Like we have the
Mm.
ABCD method. I'm a rational cognitive behavior therapy coach, right? And I use those techniques to so the bottom line here is with the REBT, with the rational emotive behavior therapy, you are working with clients one on one, and you're kind of getting them to take a deep dive into uh, what is influencing their behavior. Sometimes it's conscious and it's unconscious, right?
Yep.
Once you understand the conscious and unconscious components that are influencing behavior, then you challenge those. You challenge and then begin to replace the irrational components of those beliefs. So it's addressing the influence of underlying beliefs. So what
Yep.
I've done is I've taken the research behind DEIA, which is focusing on those tenets of building resilient cultures. It is, really employee engagement, all those things that we
Yes.
do on the HR side, right?
Yep.
Combine them together and getting people to look both at an individual and an organizational culture level. So when you talk about building resilient teams, I take the REBT side of that and I take the principles of DEA and I ask leaders to take a deep dive. One, look at yourself. I have
Mm.
a mini podcast series coming out called DEI Conversations. We're going to launch that at the end of February. But we talk a
Awesome.
lot about.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It was just again, I did these roundtables last year, and one of the young ladies who came on the roundtable, we said we got to continue to collab and keep this conversation going.
Yes. Oh,
But
yes. It's so needed.
we really are focused on just again the application of principle, and so part of that is when you think about yourself as a leader, how do you influence your culture, right? So the REBT portion of that is getting people to look at bottlenecks within their organization,
Mm,
identifying their own conscious and unconscious bias, taking
mm.
accountability for that, challenging those limiting beliefs as it relates to anything that you think, right? In terms of race, gender, sex, anything that might be influencing your personal interactions with other people, because maybe you don't realize it. And I try to break the conversation of when we talk about cultural competency and unconscious bias. People don't always realize just because somebody has an unconscious bias, that does not make you racist or sexist.
No,
We
not
are
at
only
all.
products of what we are exposed to. So the goal here is to identify those challenges and then to work through them. Now, work is not therapy, right? And so work organizations have to put parameters in place of here's what the expectations are in terms of how we treat each other. But the goal of that framework in terms of how we work to build these resilient teams is to start by identifying and addressing to the extent that we can, right? Those self-limiting beliefs, those unconscious bias at the individual level, and then asking leaders to look at and this is where the weird part comes. The
Yes.
book Introduction to the REBTDI framework is not about race or gender or sex. There's literally no statistics in there regarding that. Maybe I put a few statistics on the representation of minorities and women on nonprofit boards, but the book is not about that. It's about leading organizational change. So when we're looking at these unconscious bias and bottlenecks at an individual level, then we move to the organizational level. And literally, that change can be anything. I mean, we're using the DEIA context, but just think about it. If a leader, if you say, I'm going to change a policy or we're going to have to restructure, you're going to experience resistance, right? This framework is applied to that same process. If you're familiar with like even Cotter's 8-step model of champion change, it is similar to that. Identifying the bottlenecks and the unconscious beliefs in your organization that prohibit or inhibit change to occur. And again, it's still taking those same principles that we would use when we're building out a DEI program or leading organizational culture initiatives to facilitate and lead that change. And that is how we use that to shape and build resilient teams, because it requires behavior accountability at the individual as well as the organizational cultural level to break down those barriers and walls to facilitate resilient teams and put in policy and processes that's going to facilitate a more resilient organization.
Oh, I love that. You know, as you were speaking, I was just thinking about just kind of what you earlier said was, I understood in the very beginning, I really looked at DEI as, oh, it's this buzzword thing. But after learning more about it, getting educated on it, and then building this framework out, it sounds like you've been able to, in addition to, of course, training people on this and providing this resource to organizations, you've been able to tap into one of the biggest challenges with DEI is that it's almost taken away the stigma and the ignorance behind DEI. But I think that's what it's rooted in, is that there is an ignorance about what DEI is and what it isn't. And that's what people are unfortunately put off by it by, right? If we just relied only on what was available online or certain public figures talking about DEI, now it's just this, then we would have this negative perception of it. But DEI is very multifaceted. There's a lot of layers to this, and there's a lot of aspects of this that can be incredibly beneficial to an organization building a team. I think performance wise, I've seen such a big difference in incorporating even on my team, being able to really have those conversations, really learning those individuals. What are the things that they're best at? What are they good? What is their background? And how does that kind of influence things? And how can we make certain adjustments and tweaks to get the most performance and the most oomph out of it? And I've seen a lot of success in it. So, what do you think, just moving forward, in terms of DEI and just its progression over this last couple of years and even last few months of what has been happening with a lot of it being repealed and rolled back and all of that good stuff? What do you see moving forward in the future in terms of DEI education?
Right. I do want to say this. I'm a history. A lot of people don't know this, but I actually am a history professor. My doctorate is in
Yeah.
health science, and then I still teach. Somehow I ended up with a degree in American history, and I continue to teach it to
Yeah,
this
that's
day. Yeah,
dope.
I still
Yeah.
low key teach that. And
Yeah.
I've been
Very
teaching
cool.
courses in cultural competency for over 20 years. I just never directly involved myself. What I think is going directly involve myself in the conversations, right? Always from an
Yes,
academic
yes.
perspective. What I will say is that those of us who do this work, we have to be unmoved by political rhetoric. It is
Yes.
going to occur on both sides, and especially with me serving in the military or the work that I do, I don't really
Mhm.
engage in a lot of politics. But I am political in the sense that I'm going to continue to quietly do the work. What ends up happening in most of these cases is that stuff circles back. I wrote
Yep.
that book very much knowing what could be the political outcome. In fact, I knew that in my mind, this is most likely what is going to happen based on watching patterns historically in the past from presidential elections, because it just flip flops based on what people are wanting, right? So I knew that I was about to enter a tough territory, but I'm not
Mhm.
here to be emotional. And I think that the thing with us who do this work, we have
Yep.
to stay steadfast and consistent,
Mm.
not be emotional, recognize and be willing to say that you can change this. You can say it's organizational culture, it's organizational change. You can say that it's strawberries in a basket. It doesn't matter what you call it, right? The
Yep.
work is
Yep.
still, the issue is still there.
It's still
The
there.
work can still continues. And so I might not change my framework, but again, the whole framework was written in the context of, one, I
Mm.
say DEIA because we say DEI, but I say DEIA because I do not want people to forget that even though so
Yeah.
much of this is being politicized, people gonna find out real quick what's about to happen when some of these laws and stuff get passed. I won't speak to
Mhm.
that, but you're gonna find out real quick that
You go find out. We're here. We're here. I know exactly what you're saying.
most of the time, even in some of these positions where DEI, these leadership DEI, and that's one of the reasons why I never got involved directly. A lot of these
Yep.
position head titles, they weren't even held by Black people, or you
Mm.
know what I mean. So
Yep.
when
Yep.
people
Yep.
distinct or associated with race, about a good number of those positions were held by other people. So
Yep.
I just want to point that out. And I always include the A because we get so caught up on the ideology of race and gender
Yes.
that we forget about people with disabilities who are
Mhm.
important. And I will tell you, it was a young lady who kicked this off for me. I was interviewing a young lady on my podcast, and
Yeah.
she was an advocate for people with dyslexia. And she said,
Mm.
"Oh, Kristy, do you know that Disability Pride Month is in July?" And I didn't know what that was. I was like, was it like gay pride? Or, I didn't know. She
Yes. Yeah.
educated me. It's like, no, it's just another way to highlight disability awareness, just like we have Disability Awareness Month, right? It's literally the same thing. They just do it after Pride Month. And so I said, okay, well, let's do something to highlight this or discuss it to educate people, because you just educated me. I had
Yes.
people who didn't want to participate. They was like, no, that's LGBT. I was like, no, it's not. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
actually kicked off my diversity work series in June, but just because of the mere fact it was Pride Month. But it just so happened to be when I kicked it off, right? And then we did Disability Pride Month. But it's about bringing those discussions to the table. Recognize you're going to be challenged. But it's just like I said, when somebody picks up my book, the book is not about itself. It's not about racial disparities and all of that, because we know
Yes.
that that's existing. You don't need me to
Yes.
repeat that to you. What you need is a solution, and that's what the
Thank
framework
you.
is. And so
Yes.
just if you're going to continue to do this work, you cannot be moved by emotions. You have to continuously to quietly advocate and to move things forward, and to help people to identify that I get it. This may be challenging. This may be a challenging ideology for you to accept, but I want to show you how this relates to
Mm.
performance, employee engagement, and other outliers of workforce development that's going to help sustain your organizational culture. Now, it'll be up to you to take what you want from that, right? But
Yep.
the principle's still the same. An orange is an orange, even if you call it
Yep.
purple.
There you go.
So that's my answer to that. So I just want to advocate for people to just
Hey, hey, business rock stars. Got big PR plans for 2025? Then you need the 2025 PR Plan and Workbook. It's your step by step guide to owning the media spotlight, building buzz, and making big moves this year. And guess what? Early bird pricing is live right now. but it won't last long. So why pay more later when you can snag it now and save those extra coins for coffee runs during media pitch marathons? I don't know. Go grab it today because once it's gone, well, you'll be wishing you hit that buy button sooner. Let's make 2025 your breakout year. Early bird pricing ends soon. Visit brandingpr.com/resources.
Yeah.
Continue to do the work, even if you feel like right now you're having to do it quietly. Sometimes
Challenge.
the quietest person in the room makes the loudest noise.
There you go. It's so true. So true. So, in your career journey, that spans military service, goodness, academia, executive coaching. How did your military experience, do you think, for you, shape your approach to leadership and organizational development? How do you feel like it applied to all of that?
I always say that I'm a great facilitator and a great at number two. I could be number one in my company, but it helps me to know my role and my place, right? Like I
Yeah.
think from military structure, like even where I am now, right? The commander is charismatic and leader. I'm that person that's like,
Yeah.
we got to get this done by 4 o'clock. I'll see you at
Hmm.
for a meeting, right? So it helps me to know my own character, how I operate, and how I can continue to evolve personally, right? But it also helps in the fact of really also knowing my clients and guiding them and being a champion. Because one thing about coaching is you don't tell people what to do. In my type of coaching
Hmm.
specifically, I'm
Hmm.
guiding you. And executive coaching is almost like you're listening to them and you're asking them questions. Now, my specialty is really mid-career professional, helping them get to that next level, right? But I, as a coach, career coaching is different from all aspects of coaching because
Yes.
you do play the role of you do have to tell people what to do.
Yeah.
But you also advise. So you play different. You consult, advise, and so, in those different roles. So sometimes you mentor, sometimes you're consulting, sometimes you're advising as a career
Yeah.
coach. Just depends on what the client needs today. Whereas when you're in full scale executive coaching, the client is really coming to you with a challenge, and you're listening, and you're
Mhm.
definitely not giving them an answer, but you're asking them questions to engage them in the process of identifying and seeking that answer. The military has taught me so much about that because it's taught me about the balance. Like for example, in my role, I kind of really have to go to the commander with solutions, right? I'm expected to be solution oriented in my
Mhm.
role. I'm not going to like if I sit there and he said I'm having this challenge, I can't go. So why do you think you're having this challenge? No, as
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
supposed to
That's
be
how it
okay,
works.
having this challenge. Give me until 1 o'clock, and I'll be back with three or four courses of actions and the challenges with that. So it really helps me to identify and know when and which role I'm going to play because, like I said, as a career coach, there are so many hats. There are times when my clients just need mentorship. I have
Yeah.
clients that maybe I had 2 years ago, and they're like, "Can I just call you and talk?" So they just need somebody to listen and maybe advise a little bit. And I'm okay with that because that means that I always have that. Now, I'm not going to do a whole full scale coaching session with you, but just to know that they think of me as that person that they can bounce stuff off of. Then there are some times when I'm doing interview prep or assistance with clients, it's like, okay, you have a great start. You need to answer it and structure it this way. That's me directing them, right? Actually telling them. And then there are just times when clients are like, okay, I don't really know what to do in terms of my next steps in my career. So then we talk through it and I might advise or pose questions to them to get them thinking about where they want to go. So the military has really helped me to find that balance in that process. And I want to point this out because people think, oh, when you're a career and executive coach, you must be perfect when it comes to your own stuff. No, the reason why I'm able to do this is because
Yeah.
I experienced that. I'm experiencing it now. I'm pretty settled on my main career, but in my military career, it's like, okay, what am I going to do next, right? Oh, I'm at the 17-year
Yep.
mark. Where am I
Yep.
going? And figuring it out. So just know that we're always in a place of figuring out and growing.
Mm.
But whether I say it's the coaching experience or military experience that I have or a career experience, the same with you. The totality of our experiences are what's going to help us to become more resilient in our decision making. Because sometimes we have things we experience things we've never done before. And so
Mhm.
it can be a challenge, right? But the more you experience, the more things you go through, even in your career and daily life, it helps you to hone in your decision making, your focus, and you become a lot more resilient. Resiliency comes from experience. People think that oh, I'm not resilient. You might just not have had experience in that area. You're probably resilient in other areas of life because you've experienced the challenges and overcome
There you go. It almost sounds like, it's the same way that you exercise for physical health, right? You need to exercise those career skills so that you can build upon that. Resiliency falls right into what you're saying. You have to build on that skill so that you can perfect it and get better as you go along. So when those things happen, you get the no, oh, we're not interested in you in this job opportunity, or, oh, no, we're not interested in working together. You can bounce back and hit the ground running on to the next one. So I just love that you said that because it's so
it. Yeah,
important.
it's the business of you. I mean, it's just like
Yeah.
you're an entrepreneur
You gotta
just
go
like
through
me.
it.
I just met with my team,
Yep.
and we were looking at, okay, we're doing all of this outreach. What is really going to work to bring in?
Yep.
I did not want to do free webinars, like that whole model for. And so I was working with a coach. She was like, you need to do it. I was like, I'm not. But then my sister, my little sister, who's a guru with it, she said, hey,
Yeah.
you need to do it. And so we were, and I'm like, I'm looking at this webinar we're going to
Yeah.
do, and we have so many people that are registered for it, a good amount for us not to, have had heavy advertising, which shows that
Mm-hmm.
there's a need there, right? But in the
Mm.
process of business, you're always learning. We did Facebook ads,
Yep.
didn't work.
Yep.
We did outreach on LinkedIn, didn't work. But we're in the process of like, okay, what is working? You got to do that same thing with your own career.
Mm-hmm.
Operate like you are the business of you. You are your own personal PR firm. You should always be able to clearly and concisely tell the story of you. And don't be
Mm-hmm.
intimidated just because this person has had this career trajectory and
Yep.
maybe you feel like I don't live up to that. You have your own experiences. Speak to who you are and be true to that.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Hey, look at your own sheet of paper, right? You can't be looking at everybody else's trying to expect the same because their journey is not your journey. And that's at the end of the day, the most important thing you got to understand. So yeah, no, I love all of that. So you facilitated workshops for major organizations like Walmart. So based on your experience, what trends do you foresee in career development and organizational resilience coming in these next few years?
So I'm really trying to pay attention right now to the job
Yeah,
market and what I see. Some stuff will not change,
yeah,
but given that we do have a new administration coming in, it'll just be. I'm just paying attention to how the job market is going to go because it's going to tell me about the trends. Now, some stuff will not change in terms of
yeah.
ensuring that we have environments that are inclusive and collaborative and promoting, the standard operations, right?
Hmm.
I do think that we have gotten used to work from home, but I think some organizations are going to bring us back to a more traditional model. I'm not excited about that at all.
No, no,
And we
no.
have to really prepare ourselves for that. And if we do go back to work, then that means those stay-at-home jobs are going to become more competitive, right? And so my thoughts on that, and I'm not saying this is true, is that if the stay-at-home jobs become more competitive and it's kind of seen as a additional benefit, even though it's always been, right? Look at
Yep.
the salary because what I'm thinking right now is like, the salary packages, your fringe benefits, like staying at home is like a fringe benefit. It's a great benefit and
Yes.
great salary. I'm wondering if employers now, when they do these benefit packages and they know that a lot of people have to go back to work, there's going to be a lot more competition for stay at home, so they might do lower salaries. Just paying attention to stuff like that because in how your benefits packages are going to come together when you go and get a job, just because of the landscape is changing. So whereas now you might work comfortably from home making $100,000 a year, you might go back to that same job, and even though the cost of living is still the same, now they're paying
Mhm.
85 because they know that people will choose that over going into the office 5 days a week. So pay attention, and I would say as a collective, like don't lower our standards because that
Yep.
create the environment, cultivate the environment where our employers are willing to meet us halfway or bending to our need, right? So just remember that the relationship with your employer is a two-way street.
Yes.
So there has to be some exchange of benefits. So that is not going to change. AI is also going to continue to play a major role too. So
Mm.
if you are not upskilling to learn some basic chat GPT skills, to learn processes of automation, data analytics, That's going to be important too. Learning those skills that being able to make decisions that are data driven, even if it sounds so complex, but
Yeah.
you just keep like learning to keep a basic
Yeah.
Excel tracker. I mean, if you learn how to I use ChatGPT to build out some of my Excel spreadsheets, the ones that's changed. I have no idea how to use Excel, but those things like being able to truly show proof of work and deliver, because it's going to be a lot more performance based. Again, we're moving into a more competitive phase, right?
Yep.
And you're now competing with AI and technology. So those are the things you should
Mhm.
really be paying attention to. You got to really focus on upscaling yourself. And I do think that there's always yin and yang. So where on one
Yes.
hand you have this big push to go back into the office, the other piece will be a lot on, well, how do we rebuild those teams? And so from an organizational development standpoint, you'll see organizations really investing into how to make the workplace better, because you're going to have more, because they're going to be seeking opportunities to really engage their team and rebuild what has been, I'm not going to say quote unquote lost from the, because I feel like, hey, if you have people that are productive in doing their work, it shouldn't really matter where they work at or how. Why would you want to
That part.
micromanage like that? But so you'll see a lot of investment in terms of team building, what I would say is that if you're somebody who's looking to upskill in this space, see how you can get involved in your work environments to cultivate a better work environment, right? So
Yeah.
it'll be a catch-22. It's like, okay, they're making us go back in the office, but then they're investing in all of this stuff to really help to rebuild the team and to get us back on course. So how can I engage in that? Because as you move up in your own leadership, your own experiences, those skill sets of being able to facilitate conversations,
Mhm.
navigate challenges, all of that's going to be super important. But I also really want to encourage us to pay attention to the shift in how will, if you're going for a job, how will those packages be, your job offer package be put together in terms of your fringe benefits, your salary. Pay attention to that type of stuff, right? Because it'll leverage out.
Yes, no, exactly, exactly. Now you've had the opportunity to speak with and work with really elite organization and institutions in this country. And I'm specifically talking about your experience with Harvard and Yale. And so my question for you as we kind of wrap things up today is, what are the key lessons that you've learned from these elite organizations that can be applied by everyday professionals in organizations that are aiming to foster that kind of growth that we've been talking about today?
I'm gonna tell you two things. One from a personal level, right? I'm a little
Yeah.
girl from Mississippi. That was Mississippi. A lot of these things I got access to because I simply applied.
Hello.
I mean, okay, so
That part.
I'll tell you the story about Harvard. I was applying for a program with them, and I was planning on using my GI Bill. And they were like, "Oh yeah, we're moving things along," and they said, "Oh, it's going to be covered." And then just one day at the book, they was like, "Oh, Kristy, it's not covered under the GI Bill for you to come in and do this because I had got accepted and everything."
Yeah.
I said, "Okay." They came back 2 days later and gave me a full scholarship. So that Harvard, they scholarshiped me through their Yale program, their certificate in advanced educational leadership,
Mhm.
and they also scholarshiped me through their women in educational leadership program. They knew
Okay.
that I was military. And I cannot remember her name, but at the time, this was years ago. This was a few years ago, like 4 years ago. Over at the Harvard Kennedy School, the former Air Force dean, dean of the was it Air Force Academy. She was working
Mm.
over at Harvard Kennedy School. They actually brought her over to meet me. I got to salute her. She coined me. Like they set it up and made it a real personal experience. It's nothing special about me. I mean, I think I'm special, but
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
nothing special about me in the sense of
Hmm.
uh, did I do anything spectacular? Yes, I'm spectacular, but the most of what I did was I believed myself enough to apply for those
Mm.
programs, right? And to be able to, the same thing with Yale, how I ended up teaching there and developing curriculum for a program that it was just me applying. So one, don't count yourself out. Don't feel like you can't uh, get something done. And I'm so busy answering that first part of the question, I forgot the actual question. Ask me again. Tell me what I'm missing. What can I take from those organizations?
Yeah, no,
What I can
you
take from
did.
those organizations is, listen, So one, don't count yourself out, but then for the organizations itself is innovation. I was not intimidated with the group when I would talk to when I went and spoke with these ladies at Walmart, right? And I talked to their leadership team, recognizing that that these people that are individuals, no matter what their role is, and they're going to face the challenge of being human. And so once you embrace and acknowledge that folks are human, it allows you to go into any stage. And I truly believe if God placed you somewhere, that's where you're supposed to be in terms of that's the audience that I'm speaking to. It was the same thing. I talked to a group called I Fund Women. And that group, if you've never heard of I Fund Women, I mean, they have over 100,000 folks on their Facebook and Instagram
Yeah.
page. They're literally landing grants and funding women businesses. And I just never forget when I went in there and talked to their group of women who attended their workshop that day. It was about 20 plus women in the room, and they said, "Oh man, you took us to church, Dr. Taylor." Like I wasn't expecting it. You know, here I am.
Yes.
It was like you took us to church because I was talking about women as leaders
Mhm.
being resilient. So one, don't count yourself out, and then these organizations themselves, they have very streamlined processes and they are innovative. But just don't be intimidated to ask for your seat at the table or even apply. Shoot, I applied for things last year to present on my book in a time where things are challenging. And I mean, I got to accept, I'm presenting on my book on servant leadership, my book, the framework that we talked about. I'm presenting
Yes.
at an American University conference on focus on the key executive leadership conference in March, focused on servant leadership. So I mean, just don't be afraid to put yourself out there because these organizations, they have processes, and just because you see things being challenged politically, it does
Hmm.
not mean that the conversation will not continue. You just have to
Yes.
be willing to continue to foster those conversations in a manner that is non-emotional. And you have to engage with organizations like that, right? Who will always have initiatives in place in some level to continue to research and foster those discussions. So I just feel like the 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 Harvard experience, particularly, those folks went out of their way to make sure I could come to that program, right? When they say, "Oh, well, it doesn't cover it," I just like, okay. But then 2 days later, they gave me a full scholarship, right? Some people particularly wouldn't. So there's
Yeah.
opportunity there, right? And
Yeah.
then they arranged for me to meet that former general, for her to meet me one on one and just allow me to salute her and just make that transition. So I've always appreciated that. And I just think these organizations are innovative in their approaches, and these are the organizations that are really going to continue to lead on the research. It doesn't matter what is scaled back. The issue. I teach history.
Yes.
It doesn't
So
go
you're
away.
not new to this. You're true to this. Like
Yeah,
you
it
already
doesn't matter
know the
what you know,
patterns,
right?
right?
So don't be afraid to engage in those. I think that the
Yeah.
academic leadership is going to be so important. But as academians, I will say we have to make sure that we're not just so focused on theory and research, that we actually are giving people things that they can apply to the everyday ops, as I would say, everyday operation, everyday life.
Yes, no, absolutely. Well, hey, for you said what earlier, a Mississippi girl? Well, Mississippi girl doing her thing, okay? Mississippi girl has taken over. So that is something that I feel like so many people can relate to, especially being from smaller areas. There's this idea and there's this perception that, okay, I can't shoot for the stars. I can only shoot for what's within my parameter. And you're just saying, absolutely not.
We
Go
so
for it. And you, what is it? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I don't know whose quote that is, but I know that is something,
I wanted to
but it's
just
the
say
truth.
that one thing I forgot to add here was I just
Yeah.
started doing beauty pageants. So let's add that a little bit. I did the Miss Black USA pageant here in Maryland. It came up first runner
See?
up in my area. I
Okay.
got three more. So and beauty queen. It's just I
No,
see.
you're stunning. Stop. Yes. Yes.
Don't count yourself out, right?
No, not at all. You can never count yourself out. And just hearing from you and hearing from all these amazing experiences that you have, you are a true testament to that you can't count yourself out. Go for it. Ask the question, reach out, send the email, follow up. I think I'm underlining the follow up because people forget, like you can't just reach out and then, oh, well, they didn't reach back out, so I guess they're not interested. No, maybe they didn't see it. Follow up and see what happens from there. And sometimes you've got to try different angles. And I think you mentioned that earlier, different approaches, something that gets you in the door. And then the rest, you got to just do your thing. But the point is that you have to go for it. And I think that's one of those the biggest challenges for people is simply just not going for it. So hearing your story, I think is going to inspire a lot of people to go for it, to know that they got this, and you never know where it's going to lead. I mean, for you, it led to goodness, Yale, Harvard, bam, you've got your own framework, you've got a book that's coming out, you've got some incredible things that are happening, and all of this started with you just simply asking a question,
Yeah,
reaching out.
the book is already. I've just been a
There
little
you go.
putting it together.
Okay.
I heard Myron Golden, who's a business. He's on YouTube,
Yep.
and he talked about. He said work is always working. It's either working for you or working on you. And so
Hello.
the point is, you got to just be doing some work.
You got to.
You gotta figure out. The only way sometimes you can figure out what's going to work is to actually put a step forward. Don't wait on the wind to blow your way. Sometimes you got to just turn on the fan.
I know that's right. Well, I'll be certainly telling my father-in-law, who's actually from Columbus, that I had an opportunity to interview with you and chat with you, and I'm sure he'll have something to say. But it's just, it's always incredible to speak with amazing people like you, and that are just doing some really important work, and especially now, this work is so necessary, and it's something that people. And people being entrepreneurs, small business owners, we really need this type of support. And executive coaching is, I look at it as in the same breath as counseling is for mental health, executive coaching is for business. We need that mentorship. We need that guidance that goes beyond calling up a friend and saying, hey, what do you think about this? Executive coaching has such an important space, and it's something that certainly helps with the growth and development of us entrepreneurs. So I'm just happy that we had an opportunity to chat. I want to hear from you just as we wrap it up. Where can people get in contact with you, and what projects do you have coming up that we got to check out and we got to tune in for?
Oh, okay. So my whole mantra this year is, first of all, let me tell you where you can get in contact with me. Work
Yes.
Solutions, WORXK Solutions.
Okay.
And literally on all our social medias is Work Solutions LLC. You can literally find us almost on any platform, Work Solutions
Awesome.
LLC. My personal Instagram that I started doing these beauty pageants. So I'm on there, Dr. Kristy Taylor. And so you can connect with me there. In terms of what we have coming up,
Yes.
like I said, I'm going to drop the DEI conversations. It's a mini podcast series
Yes.
at the end of February. So we'll do end of February, early March, Black History, Women's History Month.
Okay.
In April, we are launching. We did a lot of events last year, but this year we're really focused on this mantra of being a prescription for career success. So April, I believe April 26th and 27th, if I have that correct, is going to be. I might have that date off the weekend. It's going to be our prescription for career success summit. And
Mhm.
so we also just rolled out our news magazine, workglobalnews.com, where literally every day we're posting. We have great articles on workforce related news, career advice, what's going on.
Okay.
We do have a little bit about the global perspective on there in terms of global trends, but we cover 10 different areas, and we interview some key change makers and leaders within our community. So those are the things that I really have coming up. And then later on this year, I'm going to drop my book, my story, right?
Yes.
Called The Resilient You. But the prescription for success, career success, is really all you're going to hear from me for the next 3 or 4 months as we roll out. I have a book collab that's going to be featuring it every other day or so. Even, I try to do as much as possible. I'm doing a mini podcast called The Prescription for Career Success, just giving people
Yes.
practical advice. On the 23rd of this month, which I think this podcast will have already have aired, though, we're doing a prescription for standing out workshop, and then on March 6th we're doing a LinkedIn masterclass workshop. So there's a lot going on. I'm always,
Yes.
but
Yes.
the best way to really find out what's happening with us is to go to our website, worksolutions.com. I also just want to give a quick shout out because last year I started a group called the Strategic Alliance for African American Female Entrepreneurs.
Wow.
In short, it is called SAFE, the safe space, right? The whole point of that group was supposed to be learning about business, but what it really became was a safe
Mhm.
space. I bring in speakers who are talking to us about our mental health. And the ladies actually have preferred that almost over the business stuff. But we just reached 700 people the day before yesterday. We have 700 women in that group. And we have some great events coming up for them this year just to really support them in their personal and professional growth. So thank you so much, Brandy, for the opportunity to be here today.
You're very welcome. And it sounds like you have a full calendar. I'm excited to see what all rolls out with that. Definitely want all of the listeners, all the followers that have tuned in today to check you out. And we'll be sharing, of course, your handles and information too after of this episode, where people can get in contact with you and connect with you. But definitely, I love all the things that you have going on. I want to thank you so much for being on the show and being a part of this, because this is an important conversation to have. So I'm so thankful and grateful that you are a part of this and we're able to share as much insight and guidance as you have. Well, I definitely want to remind folks, leave us a review, follow us, Branding PR podcast show, episodes coming out every Thursday. Until next time, we'll see you around, guys.